हरे कृष्णा प्रभु। कैलाश प्रभु।
O Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we're going to continue from where we left off last night. And going to begin with the next slide. If you weren't here last night, or probably somewhere, these classes are recorded. Maybe on my Facebook page also. Okay. So I'm just going to read this and explain it. Divorce yourself from the self that is harming you. I refuse to entertain any self-demeaning chatter from my mind. So we were talking about this unusual phenomena of being our own enemy, which doesn't make any sense, does it? Why would you wish any harm upon yourself? And maybe we don't consciously wish harm upon ourselves, but we act that way. So the last verse of the third chapter of the Gita, Krishna says that because we're higher than the mind, senses, and intelligence, we can control the mind, senses, and intelligence. So in a sense, you could say within us, there's like two selves. Now, of course, you could say that Atma could mean body, mind, and soul. So in that sense, there's three selves. But there's, in this sense, there's a self which we could say is our well-wisher, and there's a self that is not our well-wisher. There's self which is the enemy. So the idea of this is whatever part of us exists that is working against us, we have to either talk to it, make friends with it, or get a divorce. One or the other, basically. If you can't talk that self into supporting you, then you have to divorce. And you all know, because you chant japa, you know what happens when you chant japa, right? There's this mind that, intercedes, intervenes. So sometimes what some devotees may do, they just may talk to their mind and say, we're chanting japa, so I'll see you in a couple hours. Don't bother me. Make some agreement with the mind. Or another devotee might turn the mind off. Just like, don't even talk to it. Just, okay, you're off. See you later. You're not going to help me. Generally, you distract me. I'll just turn you off. So what we're trying to do in the development of self-care is to recognize the parts of us that are working against us and try to understand why, and then understand what do they need, how we can make friends with them, how we can talk to them, how they can help us instead of harm us. So that's the idea. So we have this little mantra: I refuse to entertain any self-demeaning chatter from my mind. The point is that sometimes you can't control these things, right? They just show up. Thoughts show up that you can't control. But it's a very interesting idea I want to share with you. We always talk about mind control, but what about this idea? It's what you allow yourself to focus on. Our mind has many thoughts, right? So let's say something comes up in my mind which is unhealthy. So sometimes it's just there. You can't do anything, right? It's just there. So what do you do when it's there? At that point, you can choose if you focus on it or not, right? So there's so many unwanted thoughts will come into your mind due to your past conditioning in this life, many lives, and thoughts you don't want. Do you ever wonder why you have a thought you don't want? Do you ever wonder, like, why is that thought there? I don't, it doesn't have any benefit for me. I don't want to do that. My mind is saying, go do this. my mind is saying this person, something wrong with this person. I don't want to think that way. But due to conditioning, it comes up. So part of the process of self-care would be when something unwanted comes up, even though we've tried to control it, but still it comes up as it does, we don't allow ourselves to focus on it. And that would be another version of mind control when the mind's not controlled. Then you control the focus. Like, we have so many things we can think about. So you choose what you want to focus on, right? So sometimes you get disturbing news and you might think, I'm not going to focus on that. It's too disturbing. It's just going to bother me, right? So a self-caring person, even when something is disturbing or when the mind is bringing up whatever it brings up that's not healthy, they don't focus on it because they know it's detrimental. Do you ever have the experience of getting bad news and focusing on it and getting completely disturbed by it, frustrated by it, or discouraged by it? That ever happened to you? What's the use? I can't believe this happened. And you can get extremely discouraged by certain things if you focus on them long enough. I don't want to do an experiment with you and tell you to focus on something discouraged, something disturbing. But if we did that exercise, how do you think you'd feel? It's okay, for the next 10 minutes, I would like you to focus on something disturbing. So you could imagine, how would we feel 10 minutes from now? Not too good, right? So knowing that certain things are very disturbing, very unhealthy, knowing that, shouldn't we choose not to focus on those things? Wouldn't that be an act of self-care? It would. Yes, of course, right? Now you might say, oh, but I can't control. I can't control that. You believe that? You can't control it. Good excuse. We can't control. At least meditate on this. We have control of where we focus. I mean, sometimes you get so upset you can't focus on anything but what you're upset about. But normally you can choose what you focus on, right? I mean, we all went to school. We were supposed to focus on what the teacher is saying. Some students don't. But the students who want to excel, where do they sit? They sit in the front and they focus, isn't it? Yeah. Like I do seminars. So a lot of seminars, a lot of people come right to the front. They want to be really close. And so I think, oh, rows empty, and they go to the very back. I did a training on how to give seminars, and they said if you sit in the left back, you're the least interested. That's a spot for the least interested, the left back. No offense to you. Those chairs were just there. So, um, no, you have to sit right here. So I think from our experience as students, we know we can focus or not. We do have some ability. I mean, unless some horrible thing happened and you can't focus, but normally we can. So that's the idea of, I don't want to entertain any self-demeaning thought. So let's look at this a little more, because the way the world is, there's so many disturbing things all the time. You get news, it's disturbing. You go to work, something disturbing happens. You come home, you hear some disturbing news. It's just kind of pretty much a regular part of our week. If I'm self-caring, I'll learn how to process these events and these thoughts in a way that is not going to be detrimental to my well-being. You ever see some people get really upset about nothing? You ever see that? You ever do that? Get really upset about something insignificant, like somebody drives in front of you, which is gonna, which is technically speaking gonna get you home 7 seconds later than if they didn't. And you're like screaming, yelling, pounding, honking. And if you're not a Hare Krishna devotee, you might get out of the car and smash the guy and break his window and smash him because these things happen, right? Over something insignificant, right? Now, a self-caring person, they'll think, okay, this is a little thing. Is it worth getting upset? Of course not. Sometimes you may have an argument with someone and you might think, I'll just apologize or I'll just give in because this is too disturbing. It's not worth it. It's not worth gratifying my ego to pay the price of being disturbed all day, all week, all month, or the rest of my life, right? That's how a self-caring person thinks. So I was saying last night, when you run into challenges with forgiving, if you're self-caring, it's quite easy because you understand if I don't forgive, I suffer and I'm punishing myself for not forgiving. So then it becomes much easier for all of us who say, I can't forgive, I've tried, it's too difficult. Maybe a lack of self-care that's causing that problem. And if I cared more about myself, why would I want to carry around something as toxic as resentment, which is just hatred it's a different form of hatred. Revenge is a different form of hatred. It's more subtle, but it's still hatred, and hatred is tamasic. So especially for us as devotees, why would we want to be connected with anything tamasic? It just pulls us further and further away from Krishna, right? Have you ever been like stuck in tamagun because you're disturbed by something and you want to get back at somebody or set somebody right? Like what's the point? So you can gratify your ego, but you're still going to suffer. So when you have a more of a self-caring context, it's easier to deal with difficulties because you start to understand the price of allowing yourself to be disturbed by things that are not necessarily disturbing, right? So next time you get disturbed, just ask yourself, is it worth it? Is this like such a big deal that I pay this price? And obviously the answer is going to be no. Okay, so let's see what's in the next slide. So we have an affirmation here. I will read it and then we'll say it together. I trust and respect myself by living in integrity with my values and this act as my best friend. So we spoke a little bit yesterday about living in integrity with our values and how this is a very important and fundamental aspect of self-care. As I explained yesterday, if I know what is right, but I don't do it, it causes a lot of internal pain. Could cause guilt, could cause shame, could make me feel like I'm a failure, like I'm a hypocrite, I'm a charlatan, all these things, because I know what to do. I know what my life stands for. I know what's right. And if I don't do what I know is right, I suffer, right? So, and we talked about how if we do what's right, we're respecting ourselves. And if we don't respect ourselves, we suffer, right? And so that's what this means. So let's say this together. I trust and respect myself by living in integrity with my values and this act as my best friend. Let's do it again together. I trust and respect myself, living in integrity with my values, this act as my best friend. I mean, it's such a beautiful gift to bestow upon yourself, the gift of living in integrity. Don't you think? That's a gift. That's a good gift to give yourself. Yeah. Okay. So I think we're going to go on to Oh yeah, here's an exercise. Envious of yourself. We will translate envious of yourself as self-hatred. So in what ways do you manifest any level of envy towards yourself? We should say, in what ways do you manifest any form of hatred for yourself? And of course, we don't mean conscious hatred like you scream at yourself in the mirror, but in the sense we've been discussing hatred as doing something which is not good for you. So you want to think for a moment, ways, things you do where you're actually acting against your own self-interest. So in that sense, you're acting out of self-hatred. Just think of some things. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to, but it's an exercise to reflect on. So it's just to bring awareness that we do these, what we're doing to ourselves. And it could be not necessarily an action. It could be in the realm of thought. It could be a contemplation on an action that we shouldn't be contemplating, an action that we shouldn't be doing. So that's also a form of self-hatred. So think of it. Could be envy, could be criticism, could be rationalizing, could be making excuses, could be avoiding sadhana in the name of something that shouldn't, that you shouldn't allow to get in the way of your sadhana. Just think of something. Hmm. Eating unhealthy, not doing something we should be doing something we shouldn't be doing. Not being kind when we could be and should be. I mean, there's a lot to put on the list, isn't there? Isn't that crazy that we do so many things that aren't good for us? Like, what's going on? What kind of life is that? Like, that is a life out of integrity. It not out of integrity, meaning it's out, it's outside of integrity, right? So the more we are doing things which are in line with what we believe, with our values, which are helpful, the more we live in integrity, and the better we'll be. Then why would there be any guilt or shame? Because there's nothing to be guilty about, right? You ever lie, and then later in the day you say, I feel bad that I lied to this person? And you know what the biggest lie is? If you say, no, I never lie. Kind of a scary exercise, isn't it? Isn't it? When you realize that we realize we have work to do. We want to come to this point where everything we're doing in our life is beneficial. There's nothing that's not beneficial on the mental level, on the physical, emotional, and spiritual. It's all, and that's the best you can do. And that's what it means to be self-caring. Or more specifically, that's what it means to be self-loving. Yes? Okay. Section 4, making the mind your friend. So this will be a little interesting about the nature of the mind. This is entitled Conquer Yourself, and I'll explain the picture in a minute. The only thing you have to conquer is the man in the mirror, the mind and senses. The first and best victory is to conquer self, Plato. Lord Krishna told King Yudhisthira that he is conquered by the love of one who has conquered his senses. Or Krishna said, nobody can conquer me if they haven't conquered their own senses first. So, does anybody know where this picture is from? It's from a movie. Does anybody know? Even if you do, you'd be too embarrassed to say it, right? There's a picture from a movie, and the man with the hat is the coach, and obviously the man facing the mirror is the boxer. And they just had a conversation, and this boxer, he wants to fight a fighter who's the world champion, and he already lost to him, and he wants to fight him again. And his coach is saying, I don't think you should fight him again. And they're having this discussion, and he's saying, why? Don't you think I can beat him? And the coach says that that's not the point. So it's kind of confusing. Like he won't say, no, you can't beat him. It makes it seem like he doesn't want to tell him you can't beat him, but he doesn't say that. He says, no. I said, why? You don't think I can beat him? He's like, it's not the point. So he's trying to explain to him what the point is. And he said, just spar in the mirror, which is basically you're fighting yourself, kind of. So he's doing sparring in the mirror and he's fighting himself. And then his coach says, I don't think the problem is you can't beat the world champion. I think the problem is you can't defeat yourself. You don't have to defeat him. You have to defeat yourself, because once you defeat yourself, you'll defeat him. And that's such a powerful message, isn't it? Because look at it this way. Have you ever had a challenge and you think the challenge is outside yourself and you say, I can't do this. Right? And the problem is not the problem is that we think we can't do it. So the problem is us, not the thing outside of us. I can't have a good relationship. I can't be a good devotee. I can't whatever. So it looks like the circumstance or the situation is the problem, when actually the problem is not that. The problem is we have resistances, hesitations, limitations, which we're allowing to control us. So it's not that we have to conquer this thing outside. We have to conquer the person, the weakness in ourselves. So now, would a self-caring person do that? Yeah. Would a self-caring person allow them to be conquered by themselves? No, they wouldn't. So it's just nice to think like this, especially when you're trying to make excuses and blame somebody for your failures, to realize, no, it's just, I need to conquer myself. And that is the greatest form of love. There's this teacher, he told a story when he was a kid. He grew up in the North. Maybe he grew up in the Midwest, in the North. We're in the Midwest, right? Is this the Midwest? Yeah. The North, so what do you call it? North Midwest? You call it the North Midwest. What do you call it? North. That's what I call it. But if it's the Midwest, it's not North, right? Is that the problem? What do you call, like Chicago? There's no name like that area. What? North what?
Midwest only. Don't think
Oh, Midwest, but you don't know where it is. All right. So he grew up in a cold climate, and as a kid, he'd go out and play. And then he'd like leave the door open because he'd be going in and out. And his mother would say, make up your mind whether you're going to stay inside or outside, because he'd keep going in and out and the door's open and the house is getting cold. She said, make up your mind if you want to go inside or outside. And if you don't make up your mind, I'll make it up for you. So he was trying to say that if we don't control our lives, then they will be controlled for us. He knew something about the Vedas and the modes of nature, so we can just say, if you don't control yourself, the modes of nature will control you. So it's, so obviously a self-caring person wants to make decisions based on what's best for them. Otherwise, you leave the decision to the modes of nature and to your conditioning, and it'll just may not take you in a great place unless you're a pure devotee and your conditioning is pure. That's a different thing. So If I don't make up my mind, the modes of nature will make it up for me. And they will force me to do things which I will regret. And what a crazy way to live, isn't it? Do things that you regret. I couldn't think of anything worse than that. Right? Just living a life of regret. Why did I yell at them? Never do it again until tomorrow morning when you do it again. And then you get upset with yourself. What kind of crazy way to live is that? So the point I'm making is that when you have more self-care, it's easier to control yourself. Does that make sense? Because you start to look at yourself and you realize I am doing things which are detrimental to my own well-being, and I'm the one causing the pain to myself. And that is insane, isn't it? You know, it's like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, nobody can harm you unless you allow them to. Like sticks and stones. I don't know if you have this in India, but when kids in America, they would play hopscotch or whatever, maybe not hopscotch, I don't know. It's a long time since I was a kid, but they had this nursery rhyme, sticks and stones can break my bones, but names can never harm me, because kids would call one another names. So, you're not going to harm me I'm not going to allow you to make me feel bad by the names you're calling me. If you throw a rock at me, that's going to hurt. But so, the world throws all kinds of sticks and stones at us, right? And so Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, if somebody does something that upsets you, or the world does something that upsets you, he said, you're actually harming yourself because you don't have to get upset. That's a choice you're making. I know it sounds weird. You don't have to get upset. This person just yelled at me. I don't have to get upset. You don't. So just maybe you don't understand that. Just take that home and digest it. Like you actually have a choice, believe it or not. Even though it doesn't seem that way. It just seems like spontaneously we get upset. We actually have a choice of how we see the situation, how we deal with it, how we want to respond to it. That's important. So when I'm practicing self-care, I make choices which are nourishing and not just at least maybe not nourishing, but at least they're not disturbing. They're not upsetting. They're really sattvic, basically. Does that make sense to you? I know that's a little sometimes it doesn't seem like we have a choice, does it? But the actual quote was, nobody can harm you unless you allow them to. Sticks and stones can break my bones, but names can never harm me unless you allow them to. Right? Yes, okay. We can go to the next one. This is from Srimad Bhagavatam 7:8-10. One who thinks that he has many enemies is an ignorant man. Whereas one who is in Krishna consciousness knows that there are no enemies but those within oneself, the uncontrolled mind and senses. And we read last night that Prabhupada was asked, what's the greatest enemy? And he said, you yourself are the greatest enemy. There's a verse in the 11th canto. And it's like listing all these miseries and all the problems in the world and so forth. And it says, you could say that these problems are caused by this, or this, or this, or your karma, the situation, the government. I forget all the reasons. And the verse says, no, it's just caused by the mind. The misery is caused by the mind. Because if we perceive things in a certain way, we suffer, right? Perceive things in another way, you don't suffer. Somebody says something to you, you suffer. And I say, he was just having a bad day. His father died. He's upset. And you're like, oh. So it doesn't bother you anymore because you understand the story behind it, right? So a little adjustment and a little adjustment of the mind, everything's okay. Interesting, isn't it? Let's read this again. One who thinks that he has many enemies is an ignorant man, whereas one who is in Krishna consciousness knows that there are no enemies, but those within oneself, the uncontrolled mind and senses. And this is a cartoon. I don't know if this cartoon is popular anymore, but it used to be. We have met the enemy, and he is us. You know that cartoon, or is that in another yuga for you? Or was that when I was a kid? Or you hadn't come to America by that time. This is, I guess it's old, like 80s maybe in America. That's Snoopy or something. I don't know. We have met the enemy, and he is us. Okay. So you might have heard of this. Your mind is like a garden, your thoughts the seeds. You can grow flowers or you can grow weeds from lessons learned in life. It's such a beautiful example because if you want to achieve something, you will need proper thoughts to get you there, right? If you want to be peaceful, you'll need proper thoughts. If you want to be Krishna conscious, you want to be proper thoughts. So you plant these thoughts in your mind and then they grow. So you can plant bad thoughts, they'll grow. You can plant good thoughts. So the good news is you can plant your own thoughts. Like right now, plant a good thought in your mind. Just everybody, just plant a good thought. That wasn't difficult, was it? That didn't hurt, did it? Yeah. So it means we can do this, right? And you can weed out bad thoughts. So you have a bad thought, weed it out. The only reason you won't weed it out is because you like it, even though it's bad, right? You like that weed in your garden. Yes? But don't ever think you can't plant thoughts. Of course, as we said, thoughts show up, but it doesn't mean you can't plant other thoughts. Okay, this thought has shown up. I'm going to plant a better thought. Let's say, to that thought, shut up or leave, and I'm going to bring in another thought, a better thought, the thought that I want. Right? Right now, I could tell you to think of something. Think of an elephant who's been painted purple. He has purple Converse tennis shoes, 2 pairs for 2 legs, big ones. And he's got a purple sunglasses and a purple hat. You got that picture in your head? Purple elephant, purple hat, purple sunglasses, purple comb. You got it? Gopal? Yeah. I just made you think of something. Wow, you didn't know how powerful I was. I totally controlled your mind. Right? So, but my point was, we can make ourselves think of something as easy as I made you think of something, right? It's like simple, of course. So if I'm thinking of something which is not beneficial, I do have the power to put another thought in my mind, don't I? I do have the power to see things in a different way. There's a beautiful saying that if you change the way you see things, the things you see change. If you change the way you see things, the things you see change. So I see this devotee and someone whispers to me, this devotee, he's amazing. He's this, that, and the next thing. And somebody else comes to me, no, it's not that devotee. That devotee's a criminal, serial killer, just got out of jail. So I'm looking at the same person, and these devotees are playing with me. They're joking with me. But however whatever they told me about him, obviously colored the way I see him. And then when I got a new vision, a new idea, no, that other idea was wrong. I see him differently. So if you're seeing the world or you're seeing people or you're seeing situations in a way which is not healthy, it's harmful, it's not helping you, you could change the way you see things. And by changing the way you see things, your emotional response to them, your experience of them will change. Right? Just like I said, this worker, a co-worker becomes upset with you, and And then you find out, oh, his father died, or you understand. So everything changes when you find that out. Or you're a very tolerant person and you just understand some people are like that. And by seeing it that way, you don't get upset. So we have control to change the way we see things to produce outcomes that we would prefer. But we don't always do that, right? And some of us just get upset because that's our comfort zone, being upset. Yes, you agree? Not all of you, but sometimes that's our comfort zone, being upset. Strange, isn't it? Don't you think? Like, so when you're more self-caring, you think like this. You think, oh, I'm getting upset all the time. This is unhealthy and it's unnecessary. I just need to see things differently. I need to see things in a way that will help me. You know, a lot of times we'll see a situation, we'll see a devotee and it's upsetting. And someone will ask another devotee, what do you think about this? And the devotee will give you a vision of it that's not upsetting. Because that's how they prefer, and that's how they prefer to see it. That's how they choose to see it. Just as we chose to see it another way, and now we're upset. We come to assumptions about what happened or why somebody did that, and it's upset. Those assumptions upset us. And you ask a more advanced devotee who prefers to see everyone in a better light. Well, how do you see the situation? Then he'll tell you how he sees it, and you understand, oh, if I see it that way, I won't be upset. And I'll be more Krishna conscious. Right? So those choices we have. Hare Krishna. Wow, time is flying. Okay, let's do another one or two slides. So let's say this together. My thoughts are like seeds, what I plant is what I get. Let's say it again. My thoughts are like seeds, what I plant is what I get. Do you ever get upset at something that you did? You come home and your room's a mess, and you're like, my room is a mess. Ah, well, who messed it up? The kitchen's dirty. There's so many dirty dishes. Yeah, well, who didn't wash them? So I look at it like this. You go to a restaurant, you order something, and then they bring it to you, and it doesn't look like what you thought it was going to look like. And you're like, why are you bringing me this? I said, because you ordered it. And so it's like, we get upset with our karma. Our karma comes and like, why this bad karma? Because you ordered it. We have a t-shirt. Our t-shirt salesman is not feeling well. So tomorrow night, Saturday. I don't know if we have this one left, but it says, karma is like cooking. Whatever you make, you eat. So it's like, you cook something and you're screaming, this is horrible, but you cooked it. Sometimes life is like that, right? Oh. If you don't like the way it cooks, learn to cook. If you don't like the way you're responding to the world, you can do it differently. Okay, the next one. The power of I decide. We always have a choice. This is a quote from Prabhupada. Third canto, 31st verse, 15th, 31st chapter, 15th verse. Independence implies that one can use it properly or improperly. It is not static, it is dynamic. So we understand that the jiva tattva, the jiva soul has independence. So independence means you can make decisions. You can decide to go right or left, up or down, back or forward. And the beauty of this is the soul is the decider, if you allow the soul to decide. The mind could decide, but because you're above the mind, you can decide. And so if you remember in every situation you're in, no matter how difficult it is, no matter how much you feel controlled and overwhelmed by circumstances or your own mind and senses, always remember you have the power to decide differently. And you can always say, no, I'm not doing this, I'm not thinking this. You just to know you have that power as a jiva soul, that power has been given to you. Whether you use it, that's another thing. But we all have that power to make a decision to go up instead of down, to go right instead of left. Isn't that good? So turn to the devotee next to you and tell them, I have the power to decide. Now, turn to the devotee next to you and tell them a little more enthusiastically than you just said, you have the power to decide. It's a simple mantra, but it's inherent within that is inherent within that is a lot of power. Because you know that feeling where you feel like you're being controlled by the forces of nature? It's always good to remember you are above those forces. You know, we're not material, we're spiritual, we're higher. Jiva Bhuta Mahabaho. Bhumera Ponalo Vayo Kammano Purivacha. Ahankarcha. And the next verse, Jiva Bhuta. There's the 8 elements, and then there's the soul who's above. So matter can control us, but we're above it, so it doesn't have to control us. We can make decisions that control intelligence and mind and senses. If we don't, they'll decide for us if you don't decide, right? If you don't decide to chant your rounds, Maya will decide that you should not chant your rounds. Yes? Okay. One more, then we'll take questions. Oh, it's an exercise, good. On the scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being a friend and 1 being an enemy, rate how much of a friend you are to yourself. To what extent is your mind your friend? So, you know, like what percentage of the time are you making decisions, having thoughts, and doing things which are beneficial for you as opposed to not? And then if you can grade yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, if you're practically always making decisions which are beneficial, then you're like 8, 9, or 10. If sometimes you are, sometimes not, you're at a 5. If you tend to be working against yourself quite often, controlled by your mind and senses often, then you'll be 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can just pick a number for yourself. You don't have to tell anybody. It's just for your own calculation, your own connection. Like, because if you're not like at 7, 8, 9, 10, that's not good. Right? So at least we should be, the majority of the time, we should be our friend. Mind, words, and actions. Okay. Do you have any questions? Any answers? We're going to open it up to the chat. There's 22 devotees online. If you want to ask a question in chat, or if you would like to raise your hand, you can take the picture down. Stop sharing. And Srini wants
Hare
to ask a question.
Maharaj.
Yes,
A question about the conquer yourself.
yes.
Like the point is, uh, something came to my mind immediately about like how you restrict yourself. Okay, because mind is telling you not to do this or that. So how do we know whether that thing can be done by ourselves, or or because I'm not able to do it? Like if I want to become a manager, let's say in a practical way, maybe I feel that I'm not eligible to do that. I know what is my strength and my weakness.
Yes, yes.
Is that something wrong I'm thinking, or
No, what we're talking about is different
okay,
because here you're talking about capability and proclivity,
okay,
which is inherent and it's not, it's like some people are good artists, some aren't. Then, you can learn, but you'll be limited by your your talent. You can learn a lot, but your talent still will have limitations. So we're not talking about that. That would be, it's wrong to think, it's wrong to try to be something you can't be. So in this sense, self-care would not be trying to be something you can't be. It would be trying not to be something you can't be, because that would just cause you frustration because it's not your nature. So it's not like you're giving in or being controlled. You're just being practical and intelligent. Does that make sense
yes,
to
yes,
you?
yeah,
Yes, that's a good question. That's important clarification.
thank you, Prabhu.
You're welcome. We have what question? Kamal Lochan says, what do I have more control of on my activities or my thoughts? Either. Probably your activities, but I don't know. They all start in the form of thoughts. Everything begins with thoughts and then it goes into action. Or you could ask, what about emotions? When Prabhupada gave young men sannyas, he said, by taking sannyas, it's not like you're going to be free from sex desire, but you're not going to be able anymore to act on it. So you have to control it. So part of control doesn't necessarily mean you don't have a bad thought or a tendency to do something you shouldn't do. It means you control it. So any way you look at it, whether it's the thought that's pushing you or the emotion that's pushing you or the attachment that's pushing you, if you're self-caring, you won't give into anything which is going to be harmful for you, materially or spiritually. So, just got to watch out on every level, however you get hit. But of course, if you're Krishna conscious, then there's going to be less problems. You're already going to be more transcendental. You're going to be battling less with these things. You have control of everything. If I said you have more control of your activities, then when your mind goes crazy, you say, well, Mahatma Prabhu said it's hard to control the mind, so I don't try. So I don't want to say that. Hare Krishna. All right. Any questions from the devotees here? Yes, okay. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So I'm not sure how to phrase this question, but you were talking about the power of choice, how we always
Yes.
have a choice. And I've noticed sometimes there's situations when we interact with certain people again and again, and like maybe the first 10 times, first 15 times, it's easy to be empathetic and, oh, they're going through a rough situation. Let me be caring, or to show that tolerance and patience with them.
Yes.
But if it keeps repeating, like for some reason they continue to hurt us, um, how do we refrain from making judgments on them? How do we? Because I've noticed my tendency is to just say like, oh, they're stupid or something like that.
Right, right.
And that's not self-caring either,
No.
right? To just make a judgment on them. So despite repeated, I guess, besides, I guess even when we're facing that again and again, how do we still practice the same amount of patience and tolerance even after it's repetitive?
There's a couple of things you could do, but I want to, before I tell you what to do exactly, in some cases it may be necessary to create boundaries with that person, stated or unstated, so that if their behavior is so demeaning and etc., that may be necessary. Sometimes one of the ways we deal with behavior like that is we try to understand what's the story behind the person. Why did they do that? Because sometimes when you understand people's stories, that you understand, well, that's all they can do. It's all they know how to do. It's not like they're even that much in control of themselves. That's how they are, or, oh, that's what their mother said, so that's what they're saying. Like if you're the daughter and your mother is saying something that's very like not culturally appropriate to you or not even based on any real science, it's just like, well, this is like this. And to you, that's like the stupidest thing you've ever heard. But to her, it's like, yeah, this is like real. This is the absolute. That's how it is. And then you start to understand, oh, because her mother said that, her grandmother said that, and her mother said, it's like, okay, that's why she's saying that. So that's one way of dealing with it. It's like, this is going to be like this forever. I understand why. She's not a bad person. She just thinks this is right. It's like, then who's going to convince her? She's wrong, not even Krishna. So what to speak of me? So that's one way to deal with it. When you understand backstories, it explains why people do things. And it may not be what you would do, even if you had the same backstory, but at least you understand. And then it makes it possible to accept. But if it's at the point where it's like destroying you, and you've tried to do everything, then you would have to create some boundaries or distance to protect yourself. So, it's like, okay, I know I should do this, but I can't. So because I can't do this, it's really becoming abusive. I'm being abused by this behavior and I don't know how to see it and deal with it any other way. Then I just got to back off. That's also part of self-care. So, you don't want to, in the name of trying to be a pure devotee, you don't want to kill yourself. Which we could do, right? You ever done that before? In the name of, tolerance, like a tree, you end up, destroyed, right? That's not good. There's always, we always have to be careful that we don't try to bite off more than we can chew in the name of, this is what I'm supposed to do. But could be a very elevated position. And so I'm trying to do what I'm supposed to do, but it's really artificial for me. And inside, I'm just burning up because I can't do it. And I'm being abused, or I feel like I'm being abused. And then it's not healthy. So it doesn't mean you have to be nasty or anything, but sometimes you'll need boundaries to protect yourself. See, the problem is that because tolerance is important, and it's in our Shastra, it's everywhere, it can borderline then when we start tolerating things which are bad for us. So I should be tolerant. But now someone is abusing me and I'm tolerating that, but it's having a negative effect on me. It's destructive in some way to me psychologically. And I'm trying to be tolerant, and in the name of being tolerant, I'm getting harmed by this person. So that's not self-caring. Being tolerant is self-caring, but not being tolerant to the point where you get harmed. Then it's kind of like the tolerance has descended into the mode of ignorance. Something like that, right? Somebody comes in here, violently, we're not going to just say, oh, be tolerant, let him harm everyone. Okay. The sadhu in the back has the microphone.
Hare Krishna, Madam. So a self-caring person always introspects the mind, thoughts, and shift the mindset from negativity to positivity, and makes a positive affirmations. That a continuous practice one has to do, Maharaj. Right? It may be difficult in a beginning. It becomes a practice.
Yeah, it's a way of it's a whole way of being. It's a whole way of seeing. Yeah, you have to practice it because especially if you're not used to it. But if you start to see things in terms of self-care, then you can ask yourself, oh, well, what I just did, was that self-caring or was it harmful? And if I were more self-caring, would I even have done it? And then if you come to a point where your self-care is pretty high, then naturally it's just how you act. It's not even conscious anymore. Just like you would naturally gravitate towards things which are good for you and away from things which are bad for you, including thoughts and words, not just actions. And at least now it gives you a lens to look through that you may have not had before. Because there's a lot of self-harmful things we do that we don't even realize are harmful. And now you'll realize it. It could be very subtle. Like, maybe we don't get up as early as we should, and we don't even think about it. But when you're more self-caring, you think, well, if I were up early, I could do A, B, and C, and that would be really good for me. So it changes your attitude towards getting up because you realize, oh, this is actually bad for me to not get up at such and such a time because I need to be doing things that I will only get done at that time. So it's it's just a little shift, but then that little shift starts to give you vision in all areas of your life of how you can be better. And, it just makes you more conscious. On every level. And sometimes you'll do things that are difficult because you'll know in the long run this is going to be better. Whereas maybe before you wouldn't do that. You just say, I don't care. Worry about it later. Is that okay for now? Yeah. And then you practice it and you'll see. But the real thing is, the real direction we're trying to take this workshop and this whole idea is to the point where we actually care, because that not caring whatever is like, that's the whole problem, I'll do it tomorrow. It's procrastination. It's tamagun. I don't care is tamagun. So we want to get out of the I don't care to the I do care. And then it's just naturally things get better. So think about that. And then what can help you develop this is just start doing things, even forcing yourself to do things, more and more things that are good for you. Because the more things you do that are good for you, the more you build up that self-care muscle. So even if I do it in one area of life, if I'm self-caring in one area of life, it usually will spill over to other areas of my life because it's a mindset. So it's a pretty simple way to activate self-care. Just do something that's, get up a half hour earlier, don't eat a certain food. It doesn't even have to have anything to do directly with sadhana, but it'll spill into your sadhana because it's a mindset. So I'm taking better care of myself in one way, it spill over to your sadhana. Generally, it's like that. Is that okay?
Thank you.
All right. Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol.
Thank you so much for being with us, Prabhu. I know you came to a different environment here from Florida, but
A little bit.
but I have more of a comment than a question.
Okay.
I've been able to attend online for various reasons. I live in the temple, so I've been able to online. But
Good.
my comment is that this is so impactful what you're sharing with us. I think, I mean, maybe some of us feel the same way, but I feel like in ways that what you're giving to us now is even more beneficial than some of the countless Bhagavatam classes that we've
Hmm.
all attended. I just want to thank you from the
Oh,
bottom of my
you're
heart.
welcome.
This is like
Hare
really
Krishna.
powerful and just like, so thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Wow. Post that on Facebook, I'll get kicked out of ISKCON. They'll think Mahatma's trying to get rid of Bhagavatam classes. Thank you, yes. Very good.
We can choose not to be angry. And sometimes we need some actions to be taken.
Like a punching bag or something.
No, because when the anger arises, believe it or not, I mean, it's detrimental, it's not self-caring, but it's telling you there's something you can't
Oh, yeah,
tolerate or
yeah,
should
yeah,
not
yeah.
be tolerated. So therefore
Could
you
be.
need to do something about it. So what will be the best self-caring way to act
Yeah.
when something
Um,
happens?
yeah, well, there's lots of reasons why we could become angry. But I think, really, just like you're saying, is find out what's at the bottom of this anger. Sometimes it's an unmet need. Sometimes it's something that's built up inside that you have not expressed. Sometimes, like you say, it's a frustration that you're, running away from, and it runs in your face. I mean, it could be so many things. So it's so good to try to understand it and heal whatever it is that's triggering the anger. Because we always think it's something or somebody that's making us angry. And then, so you're never going to resolve it because that's not the case. I mean, somebody's making us angry, but that wouldn't make Jesus Christ angry with the same thing, right? So it's obviously something in us that is being triggered by them. So it's just like it's like a mindset that if I want to improve myself, when I start seeing problems within myself, I want to try to understand why they're there and how I can purify or heal or transcend or break through or do something. And sometimes you might say, well, do I need counseling or this? Or sometimes you just let Krishna show you. You've got Chaitya Guru there. Sometimes he can just show you, oh, this is why. And it could go back to childhood. Who knows? It could be so many things. I was never satisfied with this, and now when it happens as an adult, I'm still frustrated like a little kid. Could be. I mean, who knows? There's so many reasons. I may have a difficult time accepting situations. I get frustrated. Expectations let down. And maybe my expectations are not realistic. Maybe my expectations were never stated. Person doesn't even know what you expect. And so, it could be so many things. So it's important to look at these things and go, okay, why is this happening? Because if we don't do that, it'll just happen our whole life. And we'll be controlled by that anger. And it's destructive, obviously. Is that all right? You're welcome. We have a question. If we are conscious of our thoughts, and I think slowly mind control can become a habit, it is the eternal process. Be alert eternally. Comment if this is right. Yeah. It's like your mind will control you or you'll control your mind. So you want to understand how your mind works. So it's like one time my wife said something. She said, you should do this a certain way. Maybe she was telling me maybe like how to do a seminar. after I've done like 10,000 seminars, it'd be better you do this. And I'm like, I'm okay, I, we're doing fine, I was, I was just like, then a few minutes later, I said, I'm sorry I responded that way, but I have a very independent nature. So it's like I learn by doing. So, maybe even what you said was good, but if I meant, if it is good, I'll just do it. I'll make mistakes. I'll understand, that's my nature. And so I understood why I got upset because I just don't like to be told how to do things. So it's good to know that. So in the future, when someone tells me how to do something, if I get upset, I'm like, oh, that's why. And I can just say, thank you. And now I know I'm angry because I don't, I just, and maybe there's some reason I don't like to be told. That's just not my nature. Maybe I was told too much growing up and I just put cotton in my ears, and I didn't want to hear whatever the reason is. But it's nice to at least know what's going on. So it kind of explains, I understand my behavior. And then I'm getting all riled up inside. I go, oh, I know why. They're telling me how to do something that they have no idea how to do. That I got 3 PhDs in this field. That's why I'm upset. And add that to my nature, but at least I understand it. Okay, we have a question. Is japa a good time to reflect, meditate, and filter the negativity in the mind? It's a good time to turn the mind off. I have such an ugly and negative perspective on everything in life. Yeah. Just turn your mind off. And we were talking yesterday. I said, when you chant japa, you can feel Krishna embracing you. He said, that's what's happened. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Feel this big hug. So you just get rid of the mind. What's the mind going to do for you when you're chanting japa? It just bothers you. So, all that negativity. Create a little box, go in that box, everything else in your life out of the box, your mind's off, and just let Krishna embrace you. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. You try to battle your mind. You don't want to battle your mind. You want to change the way you see yourself in the world. Then you don't have to battle your mind. Your mind will just go along with it. If you want to think there's something wrong with you, your mind will go along with that. You want to think you're fine, your mind will go along with that. So you're trying to battle your mind when, fundamentally you believe something's wrong with you. Your mind's going to think something's wrong with you also, no matter how much you battle with it until so many devotees and non-devotees, when they take this self-care course, they'll take it like 100 times and they'll have the same question. How do you do it? And do you know why? Because their fundamental belief is there's something wrong with them. And so they can't do it. It's like the knowledge doesn't work because the belief hasn't changed. So that you have to change your belief that there's something wrong with me to I'm loved by Krishna. I'm worthy of his love. Krishna cares about me, Guru cares about me. And until you do that, you'll never understand this course. You'll take it 100 times, it won't work. Because that fundamental belief is holding you back. And if you care for yourself, why would you have a belief so negative about yourself? That could destroy you. I understand why a lot of people have it. It's because that's how they grew up. They were told there's something wrong with them, but don't buy it. Clean it out and replace it with better thoughts. Prabhupada was so encouraging. Prabhupada never saw us and said, hey, you, get out of here, you're useless. I can just look at you and say, no hope. He never thought like that. It's always, yeah, do it. Krishna will help you. Do it. Krishna will help you. And Prabhupada was never on this like, something's wrong with you. Krishna doesn't love you. Just the opposite. Your spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna. He loves you. Is that good or is that good? So on that happy note, we'll end for tonight and we'll see you tomorrow night. in another house in another place. Thank you very much. Yes,
One question.
one question. One more.
This is Daud Maharaj.
Okay,
I'm not sure if I understand it correctly. I just want to clarify.
okay.
As a grihastha, when you do, you have to care for your family and family members. Is it possible that while caring for your family members, somehow you are not able to do self-caring, you're kind of deviating from
Oh,
self-care?
oh, oh. Of course it's possible, but it's not advisable. The challenge for the grihastas is that you have more responsibilities than the brahmacharis, or more. Brahmacharis have responsibilities, but they're easier to fulfill. And the responsibilities are directly Krishna conscious. So it's not like I work and then I do service. Everything for them is service. So it's obviously more of a challenge if you're a grihasta. And you'll have to do things which don't seem directly spiritually beneficial, but it's part of your ashram. And so if you don't do your ashram well, then you're not being self-caring. And if you don't balance your material and spiritual life, you're not being self-caring. So it's more of a challenge as a grihasta, but it's still something you have to do. And you have to figure out in your particular occupation, how much you work, how many kids you have, how much money you need, and so forth, how to balance. It's going to be a little different for everyone, but that's part of self-care. So maybe you have to minimize self-care directly in one way to take care of your family, but taking care of you, if you don't take care of your family, what's going to happen? Then you're negligent in your dharma. And if you neglect your dharma, that's not self-care. Doing your dharma is caring for yourself because it's important. Being responsible helps you, so it's good for you. I've had some interesting experiences. Being a brahmachari and living in the temple for many years. And then going out and doing something I never did, which was to start a business and raise a family and those responsibilities. And some situations were externally not at all conducive to devotional service. So I would pray to Krishna, how can I be Krishna conscious in this situation? And he would show me how, in ways that as brahmachari, I couldn't even imagine, like were possible. So I realized that by being in that situation, I actually became stronger because the obstacle was greater, and Krishna showed me how to deal with it. So if you can be Krishna conscious as a grihasta, in spite of all the responsibilities, it'll make you very strong. And doing it as a brahmachari, sometimes it's like the obstacles are less. You have your own mind to deal with, but external obstacles are less. So it's a little easier, more simple, which is good. Why make it difficult? But if we're grihastas and it's more complicated, it can make us stronger because you have to learn how to fight in that situation. So you can't minimize either side of the coin. Balancing it is self-care. If your family's not happy, you won't be happy. So that's not caring. Caring for yourself is to make your family happy because then you'll be happy. Right? When mama's not happy, nobody's happy. Right? So if you want to be happy, you have to make her happy. We say when Mataji is not happy, nobody's happy. Yes. Right, Gopal? Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Go Premanand.
Yeah.